It was just another typical day in my suburban, a day of unremarkable events at 600. The alarm went off, startling me out of a deep sleep. Then I got up, went to the restroom and did my usual routine, spritzed water on my face, brushed my teeth and combed my hair. Years of repetition had made these steps second nature. I caught sight of myself in the mirror and noticed the fine lines around my eyes and the gray hairs in my black hair. I was 35 and already starting to show my age. I got dressed for the day, putting on my usual khakis and button-down shirt. I put on a shirt and trousers, nothing fancy, just comfortable clothes for my job as an IT consultant. Downstairs I was greeted by the smell of freshly brewed coffee. My wife Rachel, who I've been married to for 10 years, was already up and about in the kitchen, moving around in a distracted way. I gave her a kiss on the cheek as I went out to the car. She replied absently. Her gaze was fixed on her phone as her fingers tapped away at the screen. I frowned, pouring myself a steaming mug of the rich, dark liquid. It had become an increasingly common occurrence. Rachel appeared distracted and aloof as she was deep in concentration on her phone. I told myself it was nothing to worry about and put it down to stress from her job. Soon later, the sound of laughing and talking from our two kids, Emma and Noah, filled the kitchen. I forced a grin onto my face, determined not to let my wife's strange behavior ruin our morning. I sipped my coffee and listened to the kids recount their dreams from the night before. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Rachel barely acknowledged their animated stories. Her attention was still glued to her phone screen. "Everything okay, Rach?" I ventured, reaching out to squeeze her shoulder gently. She startled, her eyes finally meeting mine with a deer-in-the-headlights expression. Yeah, everything's fine," she assured me, forcing a tight smile. "Just a lot on my mind at work," she added. I nodded, deciding not to press the issue further. We all had our moments of stress and preoccupation. I had no idea that Rachel's behavior was anything more than a minor issue. The rest of the day passed by in a blur, with work, errands, and shuttling the kids to and from their activities. Later that evening, as I was preparing dinner, Rachel approached me with an unexpected request. She said, "Hey Alex, I need to schedule an appointment to get my wisdom tooth removed. Would you be able to take the day off to drive me there and back?" I thought I'd be too tired to drive afterwards. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by her request but willing to help. "Han, just let me know when and where and I'll make sure to clear my schedule." She looked relieved and offered me a grateful smile. "Thanks, Alex." When Rachel's wisdom tooth extraction date finally arrived, I took the day off to take her to the dentist. She seemed unusually quiet as we got comfortable in the car. Her eyes were focused on the window, uneasy. I asked her, trying to break the silence with a smile. She jumped a bit, like she'd been lost in thought. Oh, she just seemed preoccupied. I nodded, not wanting to pry. The drive was quiet, with the engine humming and the air conditioning gently blowing. At the dentist's office, Rachel was quickly taken to the exam room, and I sat in the waiting area, reading a magazine. It felt like only a few minutes had passed when a nurse she came out and called me back to the recovery room. "Your wife is doing just fine, Mr. Parker," she said with a warm smile. "The extraction went smoothly, but she's still a bit loopy from the anesthetic. You'll need to keep an eye on her for the next few hours." I chuckled, picturing Rachel was in a dazed postoperative state, which I thought was fine. I didn't realize how right I'd be. When I got to the recovery room, I found Rachel slumped in a reclining chair, her eyes half-lidded and her speech slurred. I greeted her, unable to suppress a grin at her disheveled appearance. She had her head in my direction and a dreamy smile spread across her face. "Hey, Ryan," she drawled, her words barely intelligible. I froze. My blood ran cold. Ryan, who was Ryan before I could process. Rachel's words took on a sultry tone that sent shivers down my spine. "I love you so much, baby. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." My heart hammered against my ribcage as I processed the implications of her words. Was Ryan a lover? Was my wife having an affair? I forced myself to remain outwardly calm even as my mind reeled. "What do you mean? Rachel? Ryan? Who is he? I knew who you were, my sweetheart. I knew everything about you." The truth hit me like a freight train, and it felt like the air in the room was being sucked out. I had spent 10 years with my wife, but she had been unfaithful. I felt betrayed. I managed to stay calm, even though I was on the verge of tears. I reached into my pocket and activated the voice recording app on my phone. I was determined to document every incriminating word that spilled from her anesthesia-loosed lips. "So you've been having fun with Ryan, huh?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yes, he's so good to me," Rachel replied, nodding enthusiastically. Her eyes were glazed over with the lingering effects of the medication. "In ways you could never be," she added. It was like a knife to my gut, but I kept going. My jaw was clenched with barely contained anger. "You're planning on continuing this affair?" she asked without hesitation. "I love him, and he loves me. We're meant to be together," she said. I was choking on the words as the gravity of her confession sank in. My wife, the mother of my children, had not only betrayed me but had fallen in love with another man. He was the man she intended to leave me for. In that moment, a part of me shattered the idyllic life I had thought we shared. It crumbled to dust around me. Yet even as my heart broke, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this injustice stand. Rachel was still babbling incoherently about her lover. I helped her into the car and got her home safely. On the way, I made a plan for retribution. When we arrived, I focused on the road ahead. On the road ahead, I was thinking about what I was going to do next. When we got home, Rachel's eyes closed and she fell asleep. I watched her for a moment, noticing the peaceful expression on her face. It seemed to show that she was at peace with what she had done. After our family stole my resolve, I carried her inside and put her to bed, making sure she was comfortable before going back to my home office. There, with shaking hands, I replayed the damning recording. Her confession echoed through the tiny speaker like a death knell for our marriage. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. I was determined to make her pay for her betrayal. I spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. I looked through her phone and computer for any proof to back up what she'd said. There were text messages, emails, and even explicit photos. It was all there, a twisted tapestry of deceit, woven by the woman I'd once trusted with my life as the sun went down. I sat back in my chair, looking around the room. I felt a sense of satisfaction. I had everything I needed to expose Rachel's infidelity. I could show it to her family, to her lover's unsuspecting wife. I smiled bitterly as I formulated my plan. Rachel had made a big mistake thinking she could just throw me away like yesterday's trash. Even if that meant setting our lives on fire, I would make sure she paid for her misdeeds. Over the next few days, I plotted my revenge. My only thought was that I needed to get even. Rachel remained oblivious to my knowledge of her indiscretion, carrying on as if nothing had changed. That only fueled my righteous fury. Finally, the opportunity I had been waiting for presented itself. A lavish company gala hosted by Rachel. I knew she'd be there, probably with her insipid lover Ryan. The thought of them flaunting their affair made me angry, but I kept calm and focused. "Hey babe," Rachel said as she walked into the living room in an elegant evening gown. "Ready to go?" I forced a smile and nodded as I buttoned my suit jacket. After a long, tense silence, I finally spoke up. I was filled with a growing sense of unease, and I couldn't help but feel like something was about to explode. Rachel, however, seemed completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Her attention was fixed on her phone, typing away at what I could only imagine were some pretty salacious messages with her paramour. Once we arrived, we were immediately swept up in the glitz and glamour of the event. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive egos. I scanned the crowd, my gaze finally settling on a familiar figure. Ryan. He was the man who had single-handedly destroyed my marriage. He was the one who handedly destroyed my marriage. He was standing across the room, his arm draped possessively around Rachel's waist, as they laughed and mingled with their colleagues. The sight of them together so openly and intimate made my stomach churn with disgust. "Excuse me for a moment, dear," I murmured to Rachel, pressing a kiss to her cheek. I marched back towards the stage, not waiting for an answer. I focused my gaze on the microphone stand in the middle. This was it, the occasion I had spent weeks painstakingly organizing. I removed the microphone from its stand with a fluid motion. The amplified feedback pierced the air instantly, grabbing the attention of everyone in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began to speak in a calm but firm voice, which surprised even me. "I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to say. Rachel's eyes widened in confusion as she realized I was the cause of the commotion. Her brow furrowed in a silent question, but I ignored her and fixed my gaze on Ryan, who had gone pale. "I've just found out that 2 of our colleagues have been having an affair." I could see the shock and disappointment on everyone's faces. Not only have they betrayed me, but also their own families. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at Rachel and Ryan. He squirmed uncomfortably, loosening his grip on Rachel's waist as he attempted to shrink away from the scrutiny. I challenged him, my voice dripping with disdain. "Speakers, I love him and he loves me. We're meant to be together." Gasps and murmurs of shock filled the air as the damning words washed over the attendees. Rachel's face had drained of color. Her mouth hung open in horror as the truth was laid bare before her colleagues and peers. But I wasn't done yet. "If that's not enough to convince you," I continued. My tone was ruthless. "Maybe these will start with a few more taps, explicit photographs and messages flashing across the big screens on either side of the stage. They'll prove that Rachel and Ryan were having a torrid affair. The room will erupt into chaos with shouts and accusations flying around. Rachel's hands will fly to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as she realizes the full weight of her transgressions. Ryan looked like he might be sick. His face was a sickly green as he tried to slink away from the chaos. "How could you?" A shrill voice cut through the den. I turned to see Kelly, Ryan's wife. Her eyes were brimming with anguished tears. "You lied to me and to all of us, Ryan." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. Maybe he was going to make some excuse, but I cut him off with a look that said, "Back off. You 2 have made your beds, so now you can lie in them," with those last words. I turned on my heel and left the room, leaving a trail of destruction in my wake. The fallout was quick and merciless. Within hours, both Rachel and Ryan they were fired from their jobs and their reputations were ruined. Kelly was devastated by her husband's infidelity. I gave her all the evidence she needed to get a divorce and end her marriage. My own divorce proceedings officially ended my toxic relationship with Rachel. It was a bittersweet victory. I had come through the breakdown of our relationship with my dignity intact, but I was still hurting from her betrayal. However, I refused to let that pain define me, thanks to the unwavering support of my children, who had witnessed I saw firsthand how deep their mother's deceit went. I slowly began to rebuild my life, one step at a time. I threw myself into my work, focusing on projects and clients that had once taken a back seat to my fractured marriage. The sense of purpose and accomplishment I got from my professional endeavors helped to fill the void left by Rachel's absence. Before I knew it, I was ready to open my heart again. It started with casual dates and friendly outings, but it quickly became something more. Her name was Emily, and from the moment we met, I was struck by her warmth, her integrity, and her unwavering commitment to honesty. With Emily by my side, I rediscovered the joy and fulfillment that had been missing from my life. Rachel's betrayal had torn us both cruelly from each other. We built a life together, one based on trust, respect, and an unbreakable bond. It was strong enough to withstand the kind of lies that had nearly destroyed me. As for Rachel and Ryan, they were devastated by the consequences of their actions. They lost their jobs, their reputations, and, in Ryan's case, his marriage. I heard that they tried to get back together, but they couldn't handle the guilt and shame. I felt no pity for them. I was just happy that they got what they deserved. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. I came out of the ashes of my past a stronger, more knowledgeable man. I had faced betrayal head-on and come out on top. The road to recovery was long and difficult, but with the love and encouragement of people who cared most, I was able to create a new path that was paved with integrity, honesty, and the hope of a better future.